Hi, Masha. Welcome to the Healed and Cash Flowing podcast show. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. I've been looking forward to this for so long because we are local, which is amazing that we're in the same town. It's amazing. So for those that don't know you, can you share how you got to your healed and cash flowing era?
Yeah. So I used to be a graphic designer in New York City for a good long time, like 20 years, and live in this sort of mundane world, live in this New York City lifestyle, having a lot of fun, but not realizing actually that I had quite a bit of trauma that was like keeping me stuck. And in 2018, I had one heartbreak too many. So there was like a good 10 years where I just kept having relationships not working out. And finally, there was somebody that I met that like I could see something with. And after a few months, it just didn't work out. I didn't know why. And it led me on a journey inward. I call it like a spiritual awakening that basically made me realize that I was the common denominator. And I went on a journey to heal my heart. And all of a sudden, this whole world of, spirituality entered, and I just became a sponge and went down rabbit holes, started healing with crystals, shamanic Reiki, shamanism just like started kind of like magnetizing towards me. And I started healing, but also learning different modalities with this like sort of desire to heal my family, heal myself. And eventually I could at the beginning could see myself helping others with whatever it is that I was learning. Even though at the time I didn't really know how that was going to turn out. And, after some years of journeying, quitting my 9 to 5, I, yeah, I realized that I wanted to be, to help people and I wanted to be a coach. So I did a health coach training with the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, which is a really great program. And yeah, I went on to discover somatic healing through this modality called focalizing and um, cacao. I hold cacao ceremonies. Cacao entered my life. It asked me to share it with others, so I started doing ceremonies 3 years ago, and I just love bringing people together, um, and sharing my gifts in these like creative ways. So yeah, the journey has been uncovering my gifts, deconditioning myself, learning who I really am, not who I was born to be or like born into being. Um, and yeah, over the last few years, I started my healing business and I've started working with people, um, one-on-one and in group, and I just love it. I just discovered that I'm so much more than a graphic designer, right? Which even in the beginning was a little bit of like, how do I, that transition period, how do I like becoming confident in the the knowing that I'm here to do something much greater than what I thought I was. And I always had a bigger purpose. Like I always thought I had a bigger purpose and I just didn't know what it was. And it wasn't until my spiritual awakening that I uncovered, you know, this part of me that is here to help people. And, just I guess I'll just share that I also huge student, love learning. So astrology is a big part of my life, human design, embodiment. Um, recently I got trained in family constellations, which is how we met. I do family constellation workshops. It's one of my favorite things besides cacao ceremonies. Um, and just realizing how much I love learning about people's families, family dynamics, like really getting to the root of stuff with people, um, getting to those things that are in the way of living a soul-aligned life. And I just have this like gift of helping people uncover what is in the way, what's in the way of what they want, the challenges of in their life, seeing it as gifts, using it as actually as like, what are it's like digging for the gold in the shadows, it's like those are the things that I'm really interested in. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you so much for giving us like the big view of everything that you have done. That is amazing. I was like taking notes and just really celebrating you for going through the process that many of us have gone through and are going through, where that regular linear path of do what people tell you to do, and do this job for 30 years, retire, die, kind of thing, without getting to the meat and potatoes of life, or like really connecting with yourself. And I was reading right before our podcast interview, I was reading one of your emails, and I was telling you, like, I had no idea that, it was this. I wanted to continue reading because the email was so good, but it was also giving me an insight why you and I connected so well, because I did not realize that you came here also as an immigrant and you had to learn the language and helping parents translate, which is like, oh, I feel that because I had to do that. So did you grow up knowing about all these modalities, or is that something that you discovered afterwards?
Definitely afterwards. Yeah, my parents are chemists. They met in chemistry school in
Okay.
Moscow, and I call myself a chemical reaction. Um, and yeah, no, I was born in Russia. We came to the US when I was almost 8, and obviously that was like a very transformative experience for me as a kid. And it opened my eyes early on, even though moving to the US, all I did was try to fit in, right? Learn English, and then kind of like was focused on that, like just
Yeah.
trying to fit in, becoming, you know, belonging, which is a really big
Yeah.
theme of family constellations.
Yeah.
And I'm a Russian Jew, so we grew up. Actually, I didn't know I was Jewish until I came here to the US, and I was learning
How
English.
is that possible that you learned here because of your people that you know
Because
here?
in Russia, you weren't allowed to be Jewish. It was actually a
Oh,
nationality. It was a nationality, not a religion. Like that, it was like
okay.
marked that way in the passports and everything. It was the Jews in Russia were oppressed.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's like lots of like lineage of oppression for my family.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then I wonder what happened when you discovered that you were Jewish, then when you began to be raised as, in the Jewish religion?
Yeah, so I went to Hebrew school, had my bat mitzvah, but like I did not resonate with it,
Okay.
I loved the rabbi at my school when I moved to New Jersey. But it was all history. It was all like I just didn't, at one point, and this has been part of the path actually for me is and plant medicine's also like a big part of my path and has helped
Mm,
me, uncover my gifts, also really step into who I am. But one thing I realized through that is that when I was like 13, I stopped believing in God. I was like,
mm,
why? Why would God want a world like this?
mm,
And I was very much more scientific, like believing in science, but more believing also in nature. I always connected with nature. I did mushrooms when I was 17 and it changed my worldview. I just always connected with nature. And I kind of always said nature is my religion. And this is way before I even really knew what shamanism was, which to me it is about that connection to the earth and, you know, to all the elements and all like who we really are.
yeah, for sure. So when you're discovering all these modalities, what did that do to what you were raised to believe?
When I discovered the modalities, I was like a kid in a candy store. I was like, my eyes were just like, whoa, this and then there's that. And, I started with crystals, like healing myself. I had there's this one shamanic Reiki practitioner that like totally changed my life. I literally had just started healing my heart and came across this crystal shop in Brooklyn called Awakening, which is now in Port Jervis in upstate New York. Um, And I remember just following my intuition, which at that time I didn't really know I had an intuition. Um, and she did like this shamanic Reiki session on me, where I zonked out. And she woke me up, she's like, "Wake up, pure soul. Wake up, pure soul." And I felt so seen for the first time in my life. Like I didn't really believe in souls, like I literally had no like completely different worldview of life. Yeah, before this. So then I started entering, I actually learned about Akashic records and astrology, and I started learning about the soul and the evolution of the soul and also the shift of consciousness that we're moving through. So I started learning a lot about that. Um, and now the modalities to me are just like so fascinating and um yeah, no,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
that's powerful. I
love it.
love it. So you discover what many of us are discovering, that you find one modality and they have three cousins behind, and those three cousins have more cousins, and you just find more things that go together that help you. It's like more tools to do what you love doing. So you're doing all these amazing things. So when you left graphic design, is that when you moved to upstate?
No, so when I quit my job, I actually my leap of faith was I went to Costa Rica and I lived in a community called Pachamama. It's like the one of the oldest spiritual communities that I know of. I think it's like at this point 25 years old that it's been around. And at that point, like I've traveled all my life and I've done a lot of solo traveling. I was very independent, but I had started to realize that, you know what, maybe being a lone wolf isn't actually the answer, you know? So I did a little search like, oh, like, are there any communities in Latin America that I could go to? And so I found Pachamama. And so that was my leap of faith. Like I quit my job because I knew that that's where I was going to go. And this was January 2020, and I was going to go for 3 months, and
Wow.
I did a work exchange there. So I worked like 20, I think it was 20 hours or 25 hours a week at the shop, like with the veggies and the fruits, and like everything was refillable. So we had, you know, jars, and we're just like filling and refilling and cleaning. And um my 3 month trip there turned into 6 months living in
Yep.
Pachamama because of Costa Rica, because of COVID.
Yeah.
So I was in the perfect place to get isolated. Um, so having that, you know, I was in Costa Rica in like 10 months that year. So that was my time of kind of like all I wanted was to have time to just like read books and study
Yeah.
the things that interested me and being around other spiritual people. But I still didn't really know what was next. And it wasn't until towards the end of that year that I realized what was missing was some kind of like training in being able to, you know, coach people or work with people one on one. So I was really into health at the time. I mean, I'm still into health. I part of my healing journey is I have Hashimoto, so it's the autoimmune of the thyroid. You know, I've been healing. It's actually been like a guiding light for me in learning to speak up, you know, step into my power. I used to be very shy, very quiet, very small. And that's been like also part of my growing is like stepping into into a leadership role, which I literally did not know I had in me.
Yeah.
Um, does that
Wow,
answer?
that's
Yeah.
amazing. I
So the
love
leap of
it.
faith, yeah.
Yeah,
The
that's
Costa Rica.
huge. So then you came back from Costa Rica and decided I'm gonna join the coaching program. Is that what you did?
Towards the end of my time in Costa
Yeah.
Rica, yeah, I signed up for IIN and I started training in that. And came back to COVID New York. It was like November 2020, and it was like
Wow.
I went from this living my best life to crashing really hard. You know, kind of like getting back into
Yeah.
Brooklyn. I had a Brooklyn apartment at the time still. My roommate was a nurse in the ICU, so he isolated himself. It was just like really a weird time to be in New York also. Um, and like a few months after that, I went through a little bit of a traumatic experience with a really good friend of mine that like cut me out of her life. And um, you know, I experienced like a week of just like not being able to sleep, like just really experiencing like this shock, you know? And that led me to realize that like I need some help and talk therapy is not the answer. So I started searching for therapy, therapists with like somatic experience or embodiment, you know, tools. and I couldn't find one. And at the same time, I got an email from my now colleague and teacher and friend, Nick Werber, announcing this training called the Focalizing Practitioner Training, which was basically, it's a modality around um, somatic healing and practices. And I didn't even do it like I've never even had a focalizing session, and I signed up because it was like, this is it, like this is what I I know I want to do this. So um yeah, so somatic healing entered my life while I was still training in the health coaching program. And now I actually like co-teach this program. I ended up assisting for the last 3 years with the institute. And yeah, I freaking love it. I love it. It's so
Wow.
amazing to see. It changed my life, this training, embodiment. You do
Yeah,
somatic work too.
yeah, I
So
do. I do. Yeah. And it sounds like we came to it for the same reason. So I had done talk therapy for over 5 years on and off, and it had I don't want to say that it doesn't work. It works to a point. It's very slow to me, for me anyway. Now that I have experienced other things that work much faster and are more effective. But I think it's a gateway, right, to get more help. I think that a lot of people have been failed by therapy and then they shut themselves down. And somatics, that's what I did. I was looking for something and I was introduced by someone via email. And I'm like, I need to learn this for myself. And I think within 1 or 2 classes, I'm like, this is what I want to do. I just realized this somatics is just changes people's lives so quickly. And we don't know, even I love not so much the book, but just the title itself. The body keeps the score. It just tells the whole entire story. The body does keep that, it remembers what has happened to us. So it's amazing how you can find where in the body it's stuck and then help people release it. And I know that you do that so very well. So you have mentioned family constellations, which is how we met. So for those that don't know what that is, can you give us the Cliff Notes down version of what that is?
yeah. So family constellations, it's a phenomenological work, and it was created by this German psychologist, Bert Hellinger. And he he was actually captured as a, like, okay, so I'm trying to say the story. He basically created family constellations through his experiences journeying. Um, and it works with the collective consciousness. It's really kind of hard to explain. So
Yeah.
I might actually like pull up a sheet. That's okay.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
have
for
them
sure.
here.
I have found while you looked at for that, I have found it. I don't know how I found it. I definitely heard about this show, your other self, on Netflix. I
Mm.
found it, and I found it probably right after the pandemic. And I have only found it online. And I always knew that I wanted to do it in person because it was so life-changing. And I thought I was gonna have to go to Latin America to be honest.
Uh,
And then for it to come like to my backyard, it's insane.
It's right here. I know.
Yeah, it is.
It's actually insane that I became a facilitator of it. That's like mind-blowing to me because
Yeah.
early on years ago, part of my awakening, one of the things that helped me was going to different healing centers in Brooklyn and New York, and just like soaking in different modalities and workshops. And so I came across family constellations and early on, and it just like blew my mind. Like, it's so cool. And that's how I met Nick, my friend and teacher. And so even when I was in Costa Rica in Pachamama, there was a constellator there, so I was able to do it a few times as well. It's
Um,
just like, I'm obsessed.
yeah.
That's my favorite. It's one of my favorite things.
It's only, I think, your favorite. Now that I have experienced several times with you, I cannot not see you not doing it. Like it's not even because it's so intuitive to you and you feel so at
Yeah.
home that it would be a crime if you never did it. Like I would be like, how
Yeah.
could you do anything else?
Yeah, and I'm still new with it. I just kind of did the training
Yeah.
last year, and it's just like it's very natural. When I do it,
Mm.
I feel like I disappear, and that's I think when you know that you're on the right track. It's like it doesn't feel like work at all. It's not work to me. It's a very creative process. And just to share a little bit here about it, it's basically a holistic healing modality that supports transformation through addressing what is unresolved in a person's family and ancestral lineage. It helps with mysterious and confusing dynamics, which become clearer when we see the full picture and acknowledge the history that preceded it. So basically, things that happen to us, to our families, generations back still affect us now or can affect us now depending on what happened because the system, the family system, wants to reconcile. It wants to bring wholeness to itself. And so when there's like trauma in the past, it breaks it kind of like disorganizes the system, and it creates kind of havoc. And so we are born into these roles that we did not even choose to be in order for the system to find a way to kind of reconcile itself for the family. And so when you're healing yourself through any modality, really, you're helping heal generations forward and generations back. I think they say 4 generations forward, 4 generations back. And we are also, born into these families with certain belief systems that we can't always see when we're in it. And so one of the beautiful things about family constellations is you get to step out and actually see what's at play here. And you don't have to even know what happened in the past because you can discover it through this family constellations work. And things like war, right? Things like abortions, miscarriages, let's say an ancestor, like a great grandfather, wasn't allowed to be with the love of his life and was stuck in a loveless marriage. Like that could be affecting somebody now. Um, it's really interesting. And yeah, the full picture, it helps uncover and address these hidden loyalties or historical trauma in the family, these repetitive and confusing patterns of behavior, a sense of burden or guilt the client may be carrying, and more. So we carry these burdens for our ancestors. And especially like it's like the things that we're constantly dealing with, and we're like, why is this happening to me? Like, why do I keep doing this? Sometimes it could very much be like trapped energy in the system.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so through constellation work, you can uncover these kind of challenges and literally like reorganize it and bring healing towards the system. And it's not just families, like it's actually anything that has systems. You can bring it into this work. So like um, companies can do constellation work. So there's like um, bosses are like parents,
Yeah.
employees are like children, and there could be total disorder in that whole world as well. And a lot of the things, there's a lot of basically I don't want to call them, I kind of almost want to call them secrets, but they're not. It's like there's like these hidden ways that things
Yeah.
happen. And I learned, basically what could be happening here. And what happens in a constellation work can be done in groups and one-on-one. There's different ways to do one-on-one. Everyone does them differently. I like using footsteps or papers on the floor, but the group work is like, oh, I love it. It's where it's at. And what happens in group constellations, and I know you've been to it, and I'm really curious
Yeah.
to hear from your experience of that. Um, Basically, somebody volunteers an intention that they're dealing with, right? Like a client, and they choose to share whatever it is that they want to they want help with. And after a little bit of kind of Q&A with this person, I would invite them to pick some representatives for their constellation. So maybe, they're wondering about money. Maybe they're wondering, wanting to have a better relationship with money. And so I would ask this person to, okay, like, would you, can you bring in somebody, choose somebody to represent your mother? And then they would choose somebody to represent the mother, choose somebody to represent money. They would choose somebody to represent money and choose somebody to represent you. So all of a sudden, these three people come in to the center of the room and they embody these energies, right? It doesn't have to be just people. People can represent um, things that are like the unknown, the block. They can represent feelings, emotions like shame, countries, um, source, like resources. So you can even bring in, spiritual resources like God, if that's supportive to you, or, ancestors that are healed before the trauma happened. That's also really, really helpful and resourceful to bring in. But basically what happens is it's not acting. But when you come into the space, and I remember the first time I represented, I was like so nervous. I was like,
Yeah,
is this acting? Like what's gonna happen? But like I remember
yeah,
as soon as I entered the field, as we call it, like entering the field,
yeah,
you you just get overtaken by these sensations, emotions, movements. And so
yeah,
there's movements that are invited throughout. And you basically see it play out in front of your eyes. Like, you actually see what's between me and mom, like what's between me and, my significant other. Like, why are we, what's happening here, or siblings. And then through certain like movements, and there's certain techniques within the constellation that like help progress the constellation. But I always like to share that the constellation like is gonna do its thing. It's
yes,
almost like as a facilitator, it's a creative process. It's all experimental. Um, I stand in a curious place. I ask questions. I inquire, and yeah, but ultimately the constellation is gonna like reveal its own answers. Yeah.
yeah. I think it's interesting. And as you were talking, now that I have experienced it numerous times, I can now see the correlation with somatics because it's
Mhm.
almost like your ancestors or things that happened in the past are stuck. And through the constellation, they get unstuck. And because that thing gets on top, unstuck, you get unstuck. That makes sense? Like I never even thought about it that way, but it
Definitely.
kind
It's
of
like
makes sense to me.
I wrote it in the email today. I was like, constellation work is basically a way to bring your inner insides outside. Like whatever's happening inside, you can actually like bring it out and have it play out. So I haven't done this yet, but I'm very interested in exploring internal family systems through constellation work because yeah, you
Yeah.
can bring out your different parts, and somatics works really well within constellation. Like I got trained in constellations through Nick Werber, who's again the focalizing
Mhm.
teacher as well. And so we bring in this sort of trauma informed embodied way of holding the space. So asking people like, yeah, what are you noticing in your body, while they're standing representing. Um, Definitely. It's yeah, our body holds not just our traumas from now, but also generational things and cultural things. And
Yeah. Especially when you think about it, like if we were already in our grandmother's womb, like think about that. So there's DNA from those two generations back. And now you're on the third generation. So just from that physiological perspective, it makes sense.
Mhm.
And one thing that I noticed, because I done it for myself, and then I was able to do it in a group. And just like you, I was really nervous because I'm like, the beauty is that you don't know the person, you don't know anybody there. So it's not like you can pretend or you can be biased by what you know. You don't know the people there, which is, I think, incredible. And it helps because there's no bias. But then there's a knowing that comes over. And that's what I like. Like you are gonna represent so and so, and then you're going into the imaginary circle and you know exactly how to behave, you know what to do. And there's this sense of reverence because you're like, okay, I'm here to help this generation, to help these people. And it's a beautiful thing to see when the person, like I could, when you see it in their eyes or their face, they're like, that's it. Like, wow, that's what I was afraid of, or that's the thing that's been plaguing us for a long time.
Yeah, and you know, this work goes really deep. It's like really deep and it creates ripples. It like, you know, we like to share, I like to share that like not to really talk about it for a few
Yeah.
weeks afterwards because it is like in the field that there it creates
Mhm.
shifts. And you know, I've heard people or even myself like years later, it oh that remember that constellation and like it shows up or months later, it's just like
Wow.
creates this like ripple effect, you know. Yeah, it's and it, you know, there's so much more than just generational. It could also be like when you're born, the birth story, you know, or there's so many things at play, like what, yeah, your relationship with life is very much related to your relationship with your mother. Your relationship with money is very much related to your relationship with your mother,
Yeah.
as well as significant others. Like there's certain we get so much from our family, from our parents especially, and they all have different sort of themes. So a lot of addiction actually is connected to the father.
Sense.
Yeah.
Totally makes sense. I love that. So I know that you and your partner have, is this your first in-person retreat?
Our first in-person
Yeah.
retreat. Yeah. Yeah, we're so excited. It's happening in March, March 14th to 16th, and upstate New York in Socrates at our friend's beautiful little cottage. It's going to be a very kind of intimate experience. And, you know, we love holding space. We love holding workshops. We usually they're about 2.5 hours and a lot happens in that time. So this is like an extended version of that, you know, and we've been sharing cacao at different retreats like over the last year and just it's been really cool to see how much that brings. So our retreat is called Constellations for Your Heart, and it includes cacao and family constellations and community. So, I mean, that happens obviously naturally when you go to a retreat, but it's
Yeah.
really for us, it's like that's a big part of it, you know, because healing happens best when we're around other people.
It
That's
really
when we're,
does. And people that are doing the work. I mean, it's beautiful when, and this space is magical. I mean, I knew upstate was good. Once I remember beginning of last year, I was like, okay, when am I gonna move? I feel ready. I've been wanting to move for the longest time. And I was doing a somatic healing. And then the lady that was doing it, she's amazing. She was guiding me through and she's like, you already know the place that you want to go. You just have to remember. And then she just guided me through this beautiful process. And then I was like, oh my God, of course, it's upstate New York. Like I spent so much time there before and not on this side, but the other side, but still upstate, right? So once it became clear, all the wheels were in motion, and that's because I was part of that healing community that I was able to do that somatic session with her. So I just think everything is interconnected. And unfortunately, I'm gonna be traveling that weekend, so I'm gonna miss it. But it's the first one. I know that it's gonna be the first of many, so I'm not too upset because now I'm making space for somebody else to experience this
yeah.
beautiful healing for the heart, which is so needed, especially now.
And you're kind of going through your own little healing for the heart.
Oh, yes, I am. Yes, yeah, I have been very, very vocal and honest on the podcast. That's how this podcast show started, me sharing how you and I have similar journeys where I was like, okay, I keep saying I want to be in a relationship, but it's been all this time since I was married on a real relationship and something ended. And I'm like, that was a great person, but still not my person. What am I had to own my part. So I had to go. That's when I started my process almost 2 years ago, where I'm like, I need to figure this out because I don't want to keep having these experiences. I want to have a different relationship. So as you were talking, I was looking, I have it everywhere. I actually created my a different type of vision board and I have it everywhere because I'm like serious
Mhm.
about, okay, this is what I want. And I'm like, I'm gonna be familiar with this and keep it everywhere, because it's one thing to say you want something, but what steps are you taking to actually get that? It's been very healing to me to do all this work for myself and for others. So thank you for being part of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And but I also meant like you're taking your mom to on a trip, which is
I
also
am taking my mom. Yes, that's gonna be amazing. And I'm not really, from where I'm from, it was not like a great experience for me. So I think it's gonna be good to go back as I'm healing, continue to heal, and see it from that perspective. So I'm glad
Mhm.
that I'm taking her. Um, and I'll just see now that I'm more vocal, now that I'm healer, that's a word. Let's see what happens. So yeah, it's everything is a journey at this point. So I'm
Mhm.
ready for all of it.
That's awesome. And where were
So
you living
excited.
before? Where were you living before
I
upstate?
was in Massachusetts forever, for like
Oh, okay.
25 years, something like that, for a long time. And the vibe is different. This area has everything. Like if within, I don't know, 15 minutes, you go any which way and you have all the resources, all the tools, all the
Yeah.
people, all the cool people, I think, live
I,
out here.
I love it. I'm so happy up here. I mean, I only moved up here like a year and a half ago, and I didn't
Okay.
really answer your question, but I can
Yeah.
share that when I finally did leave New York, my lease was over. I actually
Hmm.
packed all my stuff into storage. I bought a car, and I was planning on traveling the country. Like I've always loved traveling, and that was my plan. Like I was going to
Yeah.
go to the Southwest. I got all these guidebooks. Like I was so excited. Um, but then I just kept hitting closed doors, you know? I
Mm.
just kept hitting like I was looking in Arizona, I was looking in New Mexico, I just like couldn't find a place. Um, and at that point I was still at the beginning of my like business, like creating a business has been like a lifelong dream, I think. You know,
Yeah.
I have an Aries midheaven, which is like your career line, which is like where you're, you know, kind of aspire to in your life's work. And with an Aries MC, you're meant to like you're meant to work for yourself. And for most of my life, I worked for someone else, you know? So yeah, like starting a business is part of my spiritual journey right now, spiritual growth. And so I wasn't in a place to go travel at that point. You know, I actually went back
Yeah.
and lived with my family for a few months for the first time in 20 years.
Wow. How was that?
You know, it was okay. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was not terrible. But
Not great.
like, no, it was my parents had this dog Penny that like just was the best thing ever.
Oh,
And
good.
yeah, no, my family and I, we all like there's a lot of love there.
Okay, good.
So, you know, it was good in a sense.
Yeah.
Um, and but that's when I stayed, that's when Cacao came into my life. That's when Cacao told me to like, hey, share me with others. So that's when I started doing cacao ceremonies. Through that, I met my partner, Tiger, who, you know, we've been together now almost 3 years, and that wouldn't have happened had I like
Not
kept, you
listen.
know,
Yeah,
not
traveling.
listened.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
so when we met, you know, we were kind of, well, so I was a little bit nomadic for a little while. Before I moved
Mhm.
back to my parents, I stayed in upstate in a couple of different places like Port Jervis and or Glens Bay and in Claryville. Like I was exploring upstate, like trying to see where I wanted to land. And yeah, we lived in Nyack for a little bit before moving up here to Catskill, which is yeah, we're in Catskill.
Nice. Yeah, I was funny because that was gonna be my next question. So how amazing that, because you were obedient to what was your next step, you were able to meet someone that is so complimentary to the stuff that you do. It's like you cannot even order this at any store, I don't think.
Yeah, yeah, and that you know, I can totally relate to you in the search for love, you know, because like
Yeah.
that was all I definitely wanted that, but I just kept having these relationships that just weren't it. It didn't work out.
Mm,
And
yeah.
I knew, like I had to believe that one day, you know, it would I'll find
Yeah, the
him, you know.
person. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was this kind of magical story where like he knew from the moment he saw me, you know, that like that I was the one. And Um, you know, and yeah, in relationships, I'm learning a lot about them now. It's just been
Yeah.
there's a lot of healing that happens through
It's a lot
them.
of healing, even with the right person, even with the one, if we believe in that. And I just love how it's funny how I don't know how it was for you, but I was in not bad relationships, but not great relationships. And I always knew it was not it. I'm like, and now I'm at a place where I need to know that I need to know that feeling, that knowing. Not that
Mhm.
everything's gonna be perfect, hunky dory, and we're gonna sing kumbaya together, but that we're gonna continue our growth process together. And I think it takes some sort of bravery and honesty with yourself and others when you say you're great. However, this is not what I'm looking for. And that's what my mom asked me the other day. It was such an honest moment for me. She was like, "Oh, have you met anybody over there?" And I'm like, "Oh, mom, I'm not into that. I have no time." And I'm like, then I stay quiet. And I'm like, what a freaking lie. That's not true. So I corrected myself. I said, Mom, actually, and it was such a grown-up moment for me. I haven't met anyone worth me being in a relationship with. And that I was so proud of myself. I was like, oh my God, that's so true. And
Mm.
I was not defending myself. I was not explaining. I was just saying the truth is I do want to be in a relationship. And at the same time, I haven't met someone that I'm gonna say, I'm gonna give this up. Like being by myself, I know you took a lot of solo trips. I enjoy my company immensely. Like me and myself, we have a great time. So
Yeah.
if I'm gonna stop having all that time to myself, it has to be for the right thing that's gonna be great for me and for them. So I'm glad that you are in that amazing place where continue to grow with a person that it's doing the work and that you guys
Mhm.
get to work together, which I'm sure it's amazing in its own way.
Yeah. It's definitely a lot of soul growth in relationships.
Yeah, and then just experiencing you guys, how's it been you guys doing family constellations together? Because I really can see how you guys have different styles and enhance each other. Like you just complement each other so well.
Mhm. Yeah, it's super fun. I think, we're learning as we go, and you know, it's cool because I love representing too. So when he gets to
Yeah.
facilitate, then I get to be representative if somebody wants me, and vice versa, and we both, I'm really into astrology, and I'm actually like becoming more and more of an astrologer.
Hmm.
Um, but we both have planets in the fourth house, which is the home and family and ancestors that, really connect us to this work. I think like we're really meant to be doing it. So yeah, it feels really good. It feels really good to learn from each other as well, and to be able to do it together. It's pretty definitely
It's a
very.
gift. It's a gift for us to get to see it. So we're glad. So glad. You're gonna have to let us know how the retreat goes. We'll make sure to put the link and all the information in the blog post that accompanies this episode because I think I would like to see what the feedback is, and for you and for them. And I know it's gonna be an amazing success just because the work is beautiful.
Thank you. And yeah, and we do, monthly cacao ceremonies, monthly family constellation workshops upstate. Usually at Moonlight in Red Hook.
Yeah,
You've been there. And
yeah,
I do moon circles too. Not with Tiger, but with, our friend Jess. And
yeah.
yeah, so just yeah, people can go to my website and see what's next.
Right. We'll make sure to put all that in the blog post. So where do you hang out the most on which social media platform it's your jam, if at all?
It's Instagram
Okay.
and my newsletter.
Yeah. Which is
Yeah.
so good. We'll make sure to put a link to it because the emails are so readable. I don't know if that makes sense, but they're not stuffy. It's just like you just invite you to keep reading, which I have been cleaning up my inbox tremendously. So your emails are still coming. So you make the cut.
Glad. Thank you. Thank you. It's my place of yeah, like creative exploration right now, the writing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you. I'm glad.
Yeah, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. Well, thank you so much for sharing this amazing time with us and for sharing your own journey. We have so many people that are in the process. So hearing from someone being so vulnerable and open about where you started, where you are today, it's very helpful. So I'm just very grateful.
Cool. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, our pleasure for sure. Thank you so much. There you have it, guys. It's been incredible to have this great conversation with someone that I have so much in common with. And I wanted to have this conversation with Masha because I believe in the work that she's doing. I consume it myself. It's helping me tremendously in this journey that you guys have been following. So I highly encourage you to check out her website, check out her things. And at the same time, I encourage you to look inwards and make yourself a priority, because when you are called to do great work, and I believe all of us are called to do great work in different ways, it is our responsibility to be healed first so we can heal others at the same time. Thanks so much for watching. Please know that I love you, that I'm rooting for you, and I'm going to see you super duper super soon.